deserves impeachment? Who deserves impeachment? What the heck is impeachment? It's time to talk impeachment, and it's about to start.
What are you waiting for? Interact with us. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell. Your ideas might inspire the next show.
So, hot topic. A lot of us don't have any clue what that actually means. Let's start with what impeachment is not. Impeachment is not removal from office. Impeachment is not even really a verb. Impeach is the verb. Impeachment is not just reserved for presidents. You could be impeached from any high position. And last but not least, impeachment doesn't necessarily have to be for a capital crime. You could face impeachment for misusing the powers that are given to that office. I misuse the powers that are given to these guns right here all the time. So what is impeachment? Impeachment is the process in which a legislative body brings charges against someone that is holding a high position, usually president. Since it's such a involved thing, usually it's reserved for high positions. Lower positions, they just let them serve out the rest of their term and people don't vote them back in. But there's an interesting thing that goes on with this impeachment thing. So it's a noun. Now, and when somebody says impeach, that is an action, it's a verb, which means to charge, to see if someone who holds a high position, high status, has committed such a action against their office that they need to be removed. One definition says to call into question the integrity, validity, the legitimacy of an action by someone holding high office.
So in all of American history, there's only been 3 presidents who've been impeached and one other that had a serious threat of being impeached.
The 2 presidents who have been impeached, President Johnson and President Clinton. The other 2 presidents who faced impeachment inquiries, President Nixon, he's seen the writing on the wall. Didn't want to be the first person to go all the way to removal. Once again, impeachment is not removal. Impeachment is the process. Removal is the punishment afterward. No president has seen that. Nixon gets close, evidence is released, he resigns. He doesn't want to be in the history books for that. Gerald Ford takes care of him and gives him a pardon, so he doesn't have to see jail time. But many people in his legal counsel and many people around him did see jail time for obstruction of justice related to the Watergate scandal. President Clinton, the PG portion of this video I guess is over now. So President Clinton, with all of his popularity, it didn't come without a price. The price of his popularity is people knowing some of the things that just kind of plagued his career throughout. The Whitewater affair, bad business dealings, to simplify it, while he was in Arkansas, continued to haunt him as president. Then, just being, there's no way I could say this, man. He's exposed himself to a woman in a way that is unbecoming of a professional. And when you get a high office, sometimes that stuff comes back to bite you. So, in a trial investigating whether any of this junk, sexual harassment, business dealings, was good enough to affect the presidency, to move towards impeachment, he denies certain things that eventually come back to bite him. A young intern named Monica Lewinsky, we never did the Uchiku, but there were some tapes where she admitted to doing stuff. So there's this big hubbub about whether rounding third base or making it all the way home. Ask your parents. I don't want to. Anyways, he was charged with perjury because originally he said there was no relations, but then we find evidence that there was some type. So it had nothing to do with the business dealings, the Whitewater scandal. It had nothing to do with the initial sexual harassment, but lying under oath while looking at some of these things led to an impeachment trial. He was not removed, and his body of work as president did gain him a great deal of popularity by the end of his career. Let's go back to Johnson. President Lincoln, knowing the country has torn itself apart, we're probably going to win this war. Things are looking good, but I want to give a peace offering to the South. A Southerner of the opposite party that he makes his right-hand man. his vice president. It's never done before, or has never been done afterwards, because it didn't work that well. President Lincoln is assassinated, and then Johnson, who was never meant to be president, he was just the only Southerner who was bold enough to say, hey, yeah, I'll be the vice president of a Northern Republican. So when he becomes president, most of the Reconstruction plans were redrawn, ignored, etc. by Johnson. He pardoned the leaders of the Confederacy Army, etc. Usually treasonous get very harsh punishments or death. Breaking away, seceding from the country is that's pretty much treason. They received pardons. Times become very, very tough for the newly freed people, and the enforcement of things that were already agreed upon by members of Congress didn't happen. So there's a growing tension between the Northern Republican-dominated Congress and the president. Congress decides that, hey, Congress has to okay any changes in the cabinet. Johnson says, who cares? I'm firing this person. I don't want to work with them. Guess what? Because, Congress does have those type of powers. I mean, we think that would be ridiculous at this point, but Congress's power was so great that Johnson was brought up on charges. Johnson missed being removed from office by one single vote in the Senate. One. Incredible. So the first time that we legitimately had an impeachment, it almost went all the way through to the punishment. What is the procedure? It starts in the House, and the House puts together a little committee. In that committee, they look at the evidence to see if it's even worth it. And they just need a majority vote. If the majority says, yes, we need to look at this thing, it goes to the floor of the House. The floor of the House just needs a majority vote. Then it moves to the Senate. The Senate needs the good old 2/3. We love 2/3 for some reason. The 2/3 majority to move towards removal. No president has ever been removed. But Johnson, who's just escaped, had enough popularity to be elected to the U.S. Senate after his presidency. Now, one reason I don't think anybody has been removed, and I don't expect to see any, is most of these things are a very partisan thing. Most of these things aren't treasonous. We're talking about perjury, we're talking about what ifs, we're talking about obstruction of justice, and all of those things are bad, but bad enough to remove them from the office of president. Usually you see a lot of strict party divide. Yay, nay. Yay, nay. Here's a question. What do you think is going to happen in the Trump impeachment? Not necessarily whether he's going to be removed or not, because to be honest, it doesn't happen very often. I'd be surprised if I ever see a president removed in my entire life. But what do you think it'll do to his legacy? Let me know in comments. Have any questions? Put those there too. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in. As always, share. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and we will continue to bring you excellent content.